Greetings everyone. Well, this is going to be a combination update and review yet again. We're going to be talking about V, the new series on Blu-ray. But we're also going to talk about the old series. But I thought you might be interested to hear some of my thoughts on how I as a lifelong V fan, feels that the new series compares to the old series and stuff like that. And then I'll go over the Blu-ray itself and give you some info about the special features, the picture and sound quality, all that good stuff. This was actually sent to me by a good friend of mine who has requested to remain anonymous, so of course I will respect that. Basically an early Christmas gift, so certainly can't complain. Yeah, and I just wanted to mention, you'll notice that in the main part of the review I'll be wearing a different shirt, and then I'll come back for the end of it and I'll be wearing this shirt again. That's because I was actually capturing the review directly to the computer because I've been having some problems with my camera. I'm actually using my backup camera for this one, which is pretty much exactly the same as the other one. It's just a slightly older model. So yeah, I was capturing the review to the computer via the FireWire connection, and it lost the connection. Like, the connection just crapped out for no apparent reason. So I thought that the entire video that I had just spent, 10 minutes or so recording had been lost. But I was actually going through my footage directory today and found the file. It actually did save it, and it's fine. So thank goodness for that. Anyway, enough of me babbling about my technical problems. Let's get on to V today on the Multimedia Chronicles. Welcome back. So, V. My feelings on remakes are kind of mixed. It depends. Like, some of them I like, a lot of them I don't. So, when I heard mixed reviews about V, some people were saying like, oh, it's boring, oh, it's not as good as the original, oh, it takes so long for anything to happen. And then other people were saying like, wow, it's freaking brilliant, it's amazing, it's the best thing on TV right now. I was like, okay, well that tells me nothing. Basically, I'm just going to have to see it and find out for myself. Of course, naturally, I'm curious because I was a huge fan of the original and its sequels. So naturally, I wanted to check out the new version and see how it compared. Now, how does it compare? Well, it's a different take on the same kind of premise, basically. I mean, a lot of people have complained about some of the differences, but honestly, I can sort of understand why a lot of things in it are the way they are versus the old version. The old version, for example, was essentially an allegory for fascism, and there was some not so subtle parallels between the visitors and the Nazis and things like that. But it's kind of like a sci-fi Nazi story in a way, all about these fascist aliens coming down and essentially taking over our entire world. Now that said, I wouldn't say that element has been completely removed from the new version. It's just a little more subtle. It's not as in your face. The other thing was people were complaining that, oh, the visitors don't have their old red uniforms. So, I mean, the way they describe it, it sounds like the visitors are just running around in civvies all the time. But no, the visitors have distinctive uniforms. In fact, the visitor uniforms and the functionality of those uniforms is a pretty major ongoing focus of certain aspects of the story. So yeah, they do have uniforms. They're just different uniforms. They're not the same. And they don't have the whole thing where they all got to wear those funky sunglasses and stuff. But, I mean, that's fine. Whatever. I mean, it's essentially the same premise, just updated and modernized. What was scary to us 25 years ago with the original series isn't necessarily still scary to us today. You know what I mean? If you're going to do a social commentary, you want it to be somewhat relevant. And V was always about social commentary wrapped up in this, exciting action-adventure sci-fi story. And in that, I feel that the new series actually succeeds. And it does have interesting social commentary that is relevant to the world today, the world we live in now. But still we have these familiar elements of the invading aliens and the motherships all over the earth, and under the guise of peace, but something's up. You know that they're not here for peace, but they say they are, but we can't trust them. But some humans are trusting them, others aren't, and some humans used to, but then saw the light and realized, hey, these aliens are up to no good. And there's just a lot of really interesting stuff going on that very much has the right kind of feel to me. It doesn't focus so much on the guns a-blazing rebellion like the original series did. It's a lot more covert. There's a lot more conspiracies and betrayals and plans within plans and scheming and plotting and stuff like that. Which again, I think is fine. I have no problem with that. While the original was a lot more action-oriented, this one is a lot more cerebral, actually, in a lot of ways. And I have no beef with that. Another thing I've heard a lot of people complain about is the pacing. They say, oh, it takes so long for anything to happen. And it's like, yeah, granted, it is pretty leisurely paced. But, on the flip side of that, my complaint about the original miniseries was I felt it was almost too fast-paced. I mean, because they only had the two-part miniseries originally, and by the end of it, you don't really feel like anything's been resolved. It's left very open-ended. I mean, the aliens are all still there, and nothing's really been accomplished by the end of it. It's like it's a very interesting allegory, but it just didn't feel complete to me. It just felt like it was the first chapter of a story. So when they did the second part, the Final Battle, it was nice to finally have a continuation of the story. The only drawback being, of course, it did not involve the original creator, Kenneth Johnson. So I'm talking about the original V for those who joined late. But that said, as a kid, I always actually enjoyed the Final Battle. That's this one, the Final Battle. And this is the original miniseries. So if you're going to watch the original, you want to start with this one, and then continue with this one, alright? Part 1, Part 2. Yeah, so as a kid, I actually enjoyed the Final Battle more because it was a little more action-oriented. And then, finally, we had the short-lived regular series. Oh, you can see the reflection of the camera in there. Woo! Anyway, we had the short-lived regular series, only ran 19 episodes, not even, almost a full season, but not quite. And, yeah, I have not actually sat down and watched this again yet. I still have the last part of the Final Battle to watch, and then I'll watch this. I haven't actually seen this since the original airings back in the 80s, so it's going to be very interesting to me to see it again, because I really remember diddly squat about it. But anyway, my point in mentioning all this is that they just didn't seem to be able to spend as much time with the characters as ideally I would have liked. We kind of got to know them over the course of it, but there was a lot of sort of secondary characters that I felt got shortchanged in terms of development, especially in the first miniseries. I mean, like Willie and his friend at the factory. I mean, we only see them in a handful of scenes, and we get the sense that maybe there's the potential for something there, some kind, if not a relationship, then at least a friendship and such. And it isn't until the Final Battle that that's actually given a chance to breathe and expand somewhat. But unfortunately, in the original miniseries, that didn't really get much attention. But see, that's where I feel the more leisurely pace of the new version is actually a plus. Because we're given time to get to know these characters and learn more about them, and even to see the villains and see their schemes and plots and plans being formulated and coming together, and as we sort of discover each successive layer of what's going on. I think the slower pace works, because when something cataclysmic does happen, it just gives it that much more weight. Because we've spent all this time with these characters and really gotten to know them and empathize with them and care about them and take an interest in them. So when something nasty happens to them, we care. That's the whole point, is you want, in a good story, to care about the characters. If you don't care about them, then, well, who cares? Who cares what happens to them? So I think in that respect, V is one of those series, the new one, where I would recommend it, but with a disclaimer, basically saying this is the kind of series where patience pays off. See, I used to watch Babylon 5 back in the 90s and early 2000s, and now I have the DVD sets. And Babylon 5 a lot of people complained about the pacing, because it really took its time to develop its characters and story and such. But the reason that was good is, as I just described, it made you care. When something huge happened, it had so much more weight to it, because you'd spent all this time with these characters and these situations. And in that respect, I feel that V works. And that's where the capture died. Notice, back to the shirt from the intro. So we're going to actually call this the end of part 1. So next time, we'll actually talk about the Blu-ray proper. And I'll give you a few more thoughts about the show along the way, because there's a few other things that occurred to me while I was filming the rest of it. Alrighty, so until then, thanks for watching, and sayonara. It's a very interesting allegory, but the but the